r/AskREDDIT. What's the strangest thing you've ever seen at a funeral?
The deceased man was a huge Star Wars fan. At the family's request for his funeral, I played Star Wars themes on the immense pipe organ as the coffin was brought in and out of the church. The pallbearers were all dressed as principal characters from the movies and the eulogist was Obi-Wan Kenobi. Everyone viewing the funeral inside your car with the window rolled up and the service playing on the radio 1 week ago. COVID-19 funeral. My father died when I was 10. At his funeral there was no coffin. When I asked my aunt, my legal guardian at the time, about this, she simply said he was cremated. There was no urn at the funeral either, and when I asked about this she just walked away. All that was there to show who the funeral was for was just a picture of my father from when he was 10. It was even a black and white photo. When he died he was in his early 50s. There were no other pictures of him at the funeral, his obituary just said his name and when he died. No tears were shed by anyone on my father's side of the family. It didn't even feel like a funeral. My little brothers and I even played tag during it. No one other than my aunt has seen his urn. She refused to even show us a picture of it. Many of my family members don't believe he is actually dead, that he faked his death and is currently in hiding. People have claimed to see him out and about, always at night, and they've even gotten pictures of the man. I have to admit that the man looks exactly like him. He even has the same hunched back and weird birthmark as him. It doesn't help that he won a multi-million settlement with the railroad a few years before his death, and even though it's been 11 years no one has found even a penny of it. And before you ask, no, he didn't have a will, no, he wouldn't have donated them to charities because he believed that charities were just another way for the government to scam people out of money. So my mom had been in a nursing home rehabbing from a surgery for over a year. Out of nowhere my dad got really sick and had to be put into a coma. Eventually we let him go. At the funeral the fucking pastor really had the balls to tell my mother, who still couldn't come home or walk from her surgery, that the reason that he died is because he got tired of waiting for her to come home. This was like something he whispered. No, this was during the ceremony with his ass on the microphone. When the coffin was brought out, the gentlemen wearing sunglasses and suits were dancing with it. Probably not weird but funny. My grandfather, who owned an insurance agency, passed away, and, at the viewing, they had a basket of peanut M&Ms because he was known for giving peanut M&Ms to his clients. My great-uncle died out of the blue from a heart attack relatively young. He wasn't well liked, honestly. He actually asked that no one had a funeral, but his wife decided to anyways. It was in general a little awkward, but nothing compares to when his wife got up to speak and says, "It's important that we don't just talk about the good things, we should talk about how he actually was," then proceeds to tell the congregation all about how inattentive and rude he was, and ends it by saying from the pulpit to everyone, "I guess the moral of this story is that you should be careful what you pray for, because I asked God to take him away and now he is dead." TLDR, wife told everyone in the congregation that she prayed for him to die. When I was a little kid, 30 plus years ago, I recall going to a funeral for a witch. The highlights that I can recall are, a woman walking around the room and stabbing the walls with a knife. It was an unfinished space, just exposed studs. Passing around a pomegranate so each person could eat a piece. I recall it being a large room only lit by candles and a bunch of people in a circle. Not a lot of details, I know, but it really stuck with me, which is weird as I do not recall a lot of my childhood. I have only gone to like 10 funerals. On the 5th some dude just got up, went to the casket, it was an open casket, grabbed the body's head and screamed, "You fucking whore bitch, I will someday come to your grave and fuck you." I think he was on something really fucking strong, because next thing I know he looks back and screams to all of us, "I will also fuck you all so hard you will have to say stop," but I won't, and just laughs until a few other people grab him and take him outside the church. I don't even remember who had died or why I was there. It was probably some family friend, I can't remember. It was a pretty long time ago. In Hinduism we burns the body covered with woods after death. After some time there is a knock sound from skull which bursts skull, something like that. After that everyone departs. I haven't gone ever, but my mom told. I was a bouncer at a funeral for my sister's husband who committed suicide. There was a list of people who were not welcome but insisted on showing up. I had to keep them out. Very strange situation. My dad's funeral. He had 3 services. A Catholic service, held by a priest friend. A Presbyterian service, held by a pastor friend, and Church of Christ service, held by his estranged family. I attended all 3. Dad was an atheist. Not so strange but messed up. Some years ago my aunt passed away from cancer. My mother was really close to her sister, so she was devastated. My aunt was living 6 hours away from my place, so my mom went there immediately by train, and my dad, divorced from my mom, took me there some days later for the funeral. I just wanted to point that the funeral was the day of my dad's birthday, but he still wanted to be here for me and my mom, and he still have known my aunt for 25 years, so he was really affected. During the ceremony, my mom heard the people in charge of the church and funeral whisper about the grown man crying at the back. My dad. It was during the funeral and my mom was like, "Of course he is crying, he knew her for really long." It was like those women were gossiping about a possible cheating of my aunt with him. WTF? Oh. And also my uncle was shitty as always, but had the guts to say to my dad that he was happy to finally take good women in his house. I don't talk to him since years because he was an asshole during all my aunt's cancer. A lady's sister died, and I was at her funeral. The surviving sister was in her 80s, she leaned towards me to hug me, I was around 20 odd at the time, I am female too, and to thank me for being there. Anyway, I turned at that moment and ended up with my hand on her boob. She continued the hug and I just stood there, hand trapped between us, touching her 80-year-old breast. I often wonder if anyone just happened to look over at that exact moment. A man in a SpongeBob costume trying to cheer up the kids. He wasn't invited but was part of some sort of package deal or some weird shit. Guy showed up to my grandpa's funeral in shorts and sandals. Nobody was mad, we all just thought it was really funny and then said, "Ace," disrespectful in Chris D'Elia's voice. Wasn't there, but the memory will never die. It was my great-great-granddad's funeral. Apparently it was raining terribly for several days before his funeral, and the family plot was up this hill that is difficult on a good day. This was not a good day. The hearse is struggling to go up the hill, slides back a little and hits a rock on the side of the cemetery driveway. The back door of the hearse flew open, my GG granddad's casket slides out and the muddy ground allows it to slip and slide down the hill, where it hits a tree sideways and tosses my GG granddad's corpse out into the mud and gunk. Everyone is freaking the fuck out, and apparently my GG grandma was already high-strung, so she's just done in by this. The hearse is too bogged down in mud to go anywhere else, so the pallbearers do their best. They keep sliding and falling in the mud, and then they decide to haul the casket, with muddy, deceased GG granddad in it, up the hill with ropes. They got him up there, dragged him over to the hole, and apparently debated just rolling the casket and using heavy sticks as levers, but my GG grandma overheard and was mortally offended, so they had to do up the casket and frame right to lower it in properly. I don't know if they filled it then or later, but I know they had to get a team of men to dig out the hearse and use horses to pull it free. Fortunately, my family has a pretty relaxed view toward death, so this is a story that we consider perfect comedic gold. My husband's family doesn't get along at all. I knew he had a big family, but I guess I underestimated it. We walk into his uncle's funeral, all the seats are filled and people are standing in the back and along the walls. I lean in and say, "Who are all these people?" And he said, "This is my family." What? We went to the wake after and I finally got a chance to meet all of his aunts and uncles that I haven't met before, along with cousins and such. They were all able to be considerate and hold it together for one day. It was such a joy to be able to show his family our girls and just interact with everyone. It was pretty overwhelming but a cool experience nonetheless. I come from a big family and while we don't always get along, I still have some contact with them. My dad's son from his first marriage rocked up to his funeral with some meth head chick that no one had met before. They were both dressed terribly, but the worst part was that she wasn't wearing shoes. I found out later their dealer came and picked them up from the funeral. At the funeral of my Phil, the pallbearers were all lined up, holding the casket ready to move it up the ramp and out to the hearse. They lift, then one of the front pallbearers stops to ask which cemetery we were all headed to. Another one tells him which location, a second pallbearer offers an alternative route, and then a third chimes in with his opinion. My Phil was a rural trucker, so parsing directions is pretty common. I found it hilarious that these mostly 50 to 60-year-old men were so ingrained with figuring out the best way to get there, that they ignored the casket in between them.